Hey everyone, I'm Bill Shi, and in this video, I'm going to talk about the famous Bugatti family, including Carlo, Ettore, Rembrandt, and Dejean. Since Carlo is the senior-most member of this branch of the Bugattis, we'll start with him first. The story of the Bugattis begins with Carlo, not only because he's a celebrated furniture designer and prominent contributor to the Art Nouveau movement, he's also the person who gave birth to his son Rembrandt, the renowned sculptor, his and eldest son Ettore, who started the world-famous Bugatti automotive company. His son Jean later became a designer and engineer for the business his father established. A family of world-class creatives, something you just don't see every day.
So let's just jump into it.
You specifically asked me not to include 100 pictures of million-dollar supercars. And because you asked nicely, I won't.
Psych!
Of course I will. We're at ID, not a vegan meet and greet. Anyway, my point is that the lifeblood, the legacy of the Bugatti family is still very much alive in the prestigious car brand, despite their supposed dissociation. Not that they have a choice, really, because it's what all car companies are doing these days. Sort of digging into their own past, scraping up every last ounce of pride and glory from the bottom of the cylinder. But we'll get to that later. Since we're looking at Carlo first, let's start with this chair he designed, right here in our backyard. Yes, it's a chair. It does exactly what you expect it to. However, and this might sound funny, but this chair, like most other chairs Carlo designed, is a piece of sculpture and a piece of art before it is a functional piece of furniture or a product of engineering and pragmatism. It's all about looks. And when it comes to the look, if you asked me to picture a chair designed by an Italian guy at the height of Art Nouveau, I probably would have imagined something curvy and organic like this, but definitely not this. This feels closer to Afrofuturism than Art Nouveau. I mean, look at it. The only part about this chair that fits the profile of an Art Nouveau designer is that it's anything but minimalistic. But instead of leaves and flower petals, it's heavily decorated with repeating geometric shapes and patterns, integrated into intricate but organized subcomponents that form a singular coherent system. The natural color of wood also reflects Carlo's respect and appreciation for material. Is it a bit too fancy for what it's made to do? Yes. But does it pay the highest tribute possible to the laws of aesthetics and craftsmanship passed down through generations? Hell yeah. Can you actually sit on it? That is a great question.
Oi, kid! Yeah, I'm talking to you. What do you think this is, eh? Get a dirty little bum off that chair before I come over and snatch it. Yeah, that's it. Better run, you little wank.
Carlo unquestionably has a style unique to himself, but since all new styles and genres of art are more or less inspired by an existing one, with the addition of a few personal twists and interpretations, it's almost inevitable that people start looking for associations and familiarities. That is to say that Carlo's personal style is one inspired by a wide range of cultures and art styles, which he himself seems reluctant to admit. Nonetheless, there are some highly identifiable Gothic elements from this famous asymmetrical throne-like armchair that he did, like the tall wooden spire or Moorish styling features from the discs and curves here and there, aesthetics forms derived from Arabic calligraphy and leafy motifs mutated from early Japanese scripts, which some have dubbed a great artistic exploration across cultures. I think there's no shame in that. After all innovations start with some form of copying, like how the graphic interface that the original Macintosh famously adopted was actually an idea stolen from Xerox, or how some of Led Zeppelin's most iconic hits were actually resampled from tracks written by other bands. What mattered more than an idea or design was the new life it's been given, how the same design can now live beyond the form it was originally designed to take, like the egg shape Carlo incorporated into his chair. That gives the egg so much more elegance and vividness than if it remained a graphic pattern on someone's new window grill. Another part of Carlo's obsession with curves and simple but organic forms derives from his early studies of animals and nature. His famous snail room truly made a big splash in Turin among his Art Nouveau contemporaries because he was, quote, the first in Italy to bring contemporary furniture to life, not dream. The elaborate geometric shapes in the cleverly ornamented interior, the curvilinear arches that seamlessly married the seat and back of the cobra chair, same thing as the egg chair, merely reminds the audience of the zoological forms he took inspiration from, but only subtly and isn't too in your face about it. It's like you totally wouldn't think of a snail the first time you step into the room, but if I told you it's called a snail room, you'd be like, kinda. Speaking of Rembrandt Bugatti! That's Carlo's second son. I'm saving million-dollar pics for last, so I don't hurt your feelings just yet. The Bugattis moved to Paris in 1902 when Rembrandt was 18 years old, the perfect age for pursuing his love and passion for sculpting animals, defying his father's wish in a way because he wanted him to be a railway engineer for some reason. 5 years later, he moved to Antwerp in Belgium and immediately decided to settle next to a local zoo so he could study the animals in close proximity. And study he did. He was seen observing and often interacting with the animals before studying his work. As a result, he often shares a very personal bond with his subjects, bridged by love and intimacy. The animals he sculpted are vibrant and full of life. Their movements and peculiarities were captured so vividly that one could almost look past the coarse finish of a lot of the pieces, which also happens to be a signature style unique to him. When others are haggling over the texture of an animal's skin and flesh, he was able to look beyond what meets the eye, incorporating the habitual and behavioral characteristics of the animals into his sculptures. That's what made him stand out amongst the others. When it comes to family ties, it isn't entirely fair to call Rembrandt the unloved child of the family, but their mother did exhibit visible favor towards her elder son, especially as her pluricity worsened over the years, which unfortunately rendered her a mere spectator of her family's wonderful achievements, meaning she had to take it all out on the less favored child, despite his constant attachment to her. The knowledge of his beloved animals having to be put down en masse as a result of food scarcity scarred him so deeply that it eventually led him to take his own life at the age of just 31, tragically ending his short but nonetheless prolific artistic career. One of the most well-known pieces throughout his entire career is perhaps this dancing elephant, made with the exquisitely rare lost wax casting technique, which I'll come back to in a minute.
Babo, I don't want to make it the chairs. The chairs, they are boring to me. That's okay. And I don't want to make it the lions. The lions, they are boring. That's fine. You do what make you happy. The cars, Babo. The cars, they make me happy. Then the cars are what you're gonna make. Now here, have some wine. I love the wine, Papa. You're 5 years old. It's a time for the wine.
Ettore founded the Bugatti Automotive Company in 1907 in the then German town of Molsheim in Alsace that now belongs to France. But he was on his way to become one of the most influential automakers long before that. In 1898, at just 17 years old, he served his apprenticeship at motorbike manufacturer Brinetti Stucci, where he mastered the basics of building and fitting engines. He was so young when he was invited to be chief designer and engineer of the Dietrich company that his father had to co-sign the contract with him. I was especially thrilled to find out that Ettore was building prize-winning cars at age 20 while I'm whining about how the Canadian consulate's website is too hard to navigate. But seriously though, he came up with some groundbreaking ideas that we all take for granted these days, like placing the driver closer to the ground to improve aerodynamics and keep the center of gravity low so the car performs better around corners. Believe it or not, there was a time when engineers believed higher is better in terms of driver seating. In just a decade, he created, one of the most successful race cars of all time. Drumroll please. The Type 35. Its seemingly measly 2-liter engine was able to spin up to 6,000 RPM, and bear in mind this was 1920, and generate 95 horsepower that was able to push the car to 190 kilometers per hour, a momentous engineering achievement in the automotive industry.
There's no way that stripped down Type 35 is gonna last. He's a little puny car. He's gonna slip out the mountain, and we gonna have to bring him to the graveyard. The Bugatti driver didn't go to the graveyard. He went to the podium, baby.
This puppy went on to win over 2,000 more races by the 1930s, absolutely dominating the racing world. In 1927, just a couple years later, they rolled out the longest, most luxurious car the world has ever laid eyes on, the Type 41, or otherwise known as the Royale, because its major clientele were aristocrats. Remember that dancing elephant? That's right, Ettore chose that piece to fit onto the radiator cap of his flagship luxury vehicle as a symbol of status. It has since been vectorized and stitched into the interior of some of Bugatti's new limited edition Veyron and Chiron models. It's also made its way into their merchandise like ties and handkerchiefs, essentially becoming part of Bugatti's brand identity. This is perhaps the best example of how the Bugatti identity flows through not just Ettore himself, but the whole family at large. It's also interesting to me how taking another artist's design and manifesting it in your own product is so much more natural and justified when it's backed by a familial bond. Speaking of familial bond, I should probably also mention this sucker, Jean Bugatti, Ettore's son. When his old man was busy worrying about sales figures and boring corporate stuff like that, he was the one who made magic happen, like leading the Bugatti racing team, which went on to win the Monaco Grand Prix 4 times and twice at Le Mans by the end of the 30s. He also built the legendary Type 57 SC Atlantic, featuring a streamlined design and full magnesium body. Only 4 of these were ever made. Oh, look how cool its hood pops. There's even a new model dedicated to this car, La Voiture Noire, which means the black car. That's because out of these 4 cars, Jean kept one for himself, the black one, and that was his favorite car. So you could say it's both a tribute to Jean and this car that he created. Bugatti was unstoppable, that is, until the Great Depression hit in the 30s. Then World War II came, Germans claimed their property and blew up their factory, then Jean died in a drive testing accident, then Ettore the OG himself passed away after the war, after which the French decided to literally impose tax on the amount of horsepower a car makes, which is a little problematic for a supercar company with most of their models having 12 to 18 cylinders under their belly. The Bugatti badge was officially dead in 1956 until it was revived, aka purchased, by Italian entrepreneur Romano Artioli in '87 and cranked out the sick quad-turbo V12 EB 110. That's what the EB stands for. You guessed it, Ettore Bugatti. And 110? Ettore Bugatti's 110th birthday. Very good, kids. Then the company went bankrupt again in '95 until it was acquired by VW in '98 and has lived peacefully under Volkswagen's big gas-guzzling wings ever since.
Another level of harassment, really horrible.
That is the legendary tale of the Bugattis, a family of great artistic minds whose fields of expertise seem to have very little overlap, but in fact shares a unique bond that makes them inseparable from one another. Today's video is sponsored by my sleep time. Stay tuned for next week's video, AFib, or atrial fibrillation, made possible by our title sponsor for 6 years in a row, sleep deprivation. See y'all then? Or will I?